This passage is a slightly tricky passage. It is about cult. The author says that tries to describe the word cult, and he says that it's not in any way different from religion, whatever the size, the background of, or however outlandish the idea of the cult. It is similar to a religion, and it is a religion. It cannot, that is his definition of cult. Let's just read it. It will be a little difficult to read, but the questions, if you go back to the passage, will not be difficult to answer. Let's quickly try to process whatever we can from the passage. The historian Gordon Melton says that the word cult is meaningless. It merely assumes a normative framework that legitimizes some exertions of religious power, those associated with the mainstream organizations, while condemning others. So he says it's meaningless. A cult is only where one part of a religion, the mainstream religion, condemns another part of the same religion. Groups that have approved orthodox beliefs are considered legitimate. So you have certain beliefs in a religion, groups that follow that are considered legitimate, while groups whose interpretation of a sacred text differs from the established norms are delegitimized. Oh, you don't follow us, therefore you are not part of the religion. So he says, therefore, the word cult is meaningless. Such definitions also depend on who is doing the defining. So whether I consider you a part of the religion or I delegitimize you also depends on the person who is deciding whether you belong or not. Plenty of cults identified by anti-cult and counter-cult groups, particularly Christian counter-cult groups such as EMNR, are recognized elsewhere as legitimate religions. Those cults which are in one area called anti-cult, counter-cult groups and are not considered legitimate are recognized as legitimate in another area. Okay? Jehovah's Witnesses, the Church of Jesus Christ, Christ of Latter-day Saints, and even the Catholic Church have all come under fire alongside the Moonies or the People's Temple. So he's talking about how a cult, a group is delegitimized and not recognized as part of a religion, and in another area it is considered perfectly religious. Therefore, he says the term cult is meaningless. To deny a so-called cult legitimacy on the basis of its size, belief, or on atrocity tales alone is to play straight into the normative definitions of power. If you deny a cult legitimacy, if you deny that it's legitimate on the basis of its size or its belief, then you are actually playing into the hands of the dominant powerful groups. You are playing into the normative definitions of power. We label cults because they are easy pickings in a sense, even if their beliefs are no more outlandish in theory than reincarnation or the transubstantiation of the wafer in the Catholic Eucharist. So he says, why do you call a cult a cult? Because they're easy picking, they're easy to criticize. But their beliefs are no more outlandish or exotic or bizarre than some of the beliefs of mainstream religions. And he gives examples, right, where a wafer is used in the Catholic Eucharist as a substitute of what actually happened. Now, people may believe it, people may not believe it. So some people may find that bizarre. So he says, any belief, you believe in it becomes okay. Somebody else believes in it becomes outlandish. So every mainstream religion has outlandish beliefs. He's given an example that some beliefs followed by Catholics may be considered outlandish by somebody else. Correct? In a paper delivered at the Center for Study of New Religions in Pennsylvania in 1999, Melton said, we have reached a general consensus that new religions are genuine and valid religions. A few may be bad religions, some may be led by evil people, but they are religions. So what's he doing? Melton is not using the term cult. He's using the term new religions. He's saying that, look, New religions are valid, they are legitimate. Yes, they may be good, they may be bad, just as religions are, but they are still religions. Okay? To call a group, be it Scientology or the Moonies or the People's Church, a cult is to obscure the fact that to study it and understanding it properly. So, when you call a group a cult, you are actually in some ways obscuring or making uh, kind of not giving importance to the fact that to study and understand that group or cult properly, both sociologically and theologically, sociologically in terms of society and its norms, theologically in terms of religion and its rules, we must treat it like any other religion. Now, you're going to study it to find out if it's legitimate or not. To study it, sociologically or theologically, you have to treat it like a religion. To study it, understand it properly, both sociologically and theologically, you must treat it like any other religion. Therefore, he prefers the term new religious movements. His point underscores, emphasizes the fact that questions of legitimacy, authority, hierarchy, delineation between inner and outer circles as are as much the provenance of classical religious studies as of any analysis of cults. All these come are part of classical religious studies. All these are analyzed when you want to analyze a religion, you're going to use all this. In classical, when you're studying classical religions, you're going to use these. When you're studying cults, so-called cults, also you have to use this. So to analyze it, you have to use these parameters which you are using for a religion. Therefore, it is also a religion. So you should not call it a cult. Of course, the uncomfortable truth here is that even a true church, large, established, tradition claiming church, and cult aren't so far apart. He says that a religion, a proper church, a mainstream established organization, and a cult are not that different, at least when it comes to counting up red flags. The presence of a charismatic leader. What was John Calvin? And finally, he ends the question with, what was Jesus Christ? What was he? Religion accepts us as something, but in an analysis, he was a very charismatic leader. John Calvin was a charismatic leader. Right? So he gives an example that finally, cults and religions are similar in having certain uh, attributes, which he calls red flags. Having a charismatic leader is one of them. According to the passage, the word cult is meaningless because, remember, the very first paragraph, the author talks about why cult is meaningless. So, when we look for an answer, we look for the first paragraph. It legitimizes and gives power to mainstream organizations. It assumes a standardized form of religion, mainly of mainstream religions. All cults, no matter how outlandish, are religions, are new religions. Plenty of cults identified by anti cult and counter cult groups are recognized elsewhere as legitimate religions. What, according to the author, why, according to the passage, is the term cult meaningless? Let's go back to the first paragraph. The historian Gordon Melton says the word cult is meaningless. Why? It merely assumes a normative framework that legitimizes some exertions of religious power while condemning others. So, when you use the term cult, you are only legitimizing some aspects of religious power and condemning others. Groups that have approved orthodox beliefs are considered legitimate. Those who stick to uh, confirmed rules, they're considered okay. Others are called cult. So, why is the meaning cult? Why is cult meaningless? It legitimizes and gives power to a mainstream organizations. No, it assumes a standardized form of religion, mainly of mainstream organizations. Okay, that you assume that religious organizations, mainstream organizations, have a standardized form. It assumes a standardized form when you call a cult meaningless, but a cult is part of a religion. Okay, all cults are new religions. Why? It doesn't tell us. Plenty of cults identified as are considered legitimate. That is where he shows. Therefore, to say that this is uh, not legitimate because it does this is not, because you consider it not legitimate, another place it's considered legitimate. But why is it meaningless? Because to call a cult meaningless, you are standardizing, you are assuming that religion has a standard form, and that standard form is that of main form religions. So anything else that doesn't conform to that standard form is called a cult. But the term cult therefore is meaningless because that assumption of a standard form of religion is wrong, right? And the author explains why. Why is it wrong? Because those who have certain beliefs, the person in power who decides what is conforming, if you find somebody conforming to your idea or interpretation of a sacred text, you're saying, okay, you believe in my religion. But somebody who doesn't, you're pushing him away and calling him a cult. So the term cult is meaningless. It just depends. So when you call something a cult, you are assuming that religion has a standardized form, and that standardized form is one which aligns with the mainstream religion. But that is not the case, and therefore the term cult is meaningless. That cult is nothing but a religion. Clear? I hope you understood that. So the correct answer is B.